What's up, Zion? It's Prince Easy coming at you again once more as usual. I do have a couple slides that I want to share with you in this fine day that we're having, right? And of course, before we get to those slides, I want to issue a copyright disclaimer for the copywritten material that's going to be shared here in this here video. Under fair use, of course, right? So without wasting time, it's going to be brief, right? Let's dive into it, right? So this happened. Persona non grata. Well, let's get into the reasons, right? The shameful and absurd UN decision to include Israeli entities in the annex of the CRSV report is further proof of the UN's true nature, a politicized and corrupt organization that has abandoned its founding principles and systematically targets Israel in its primary mission. Okay, this decision is yet another example of the UN's long-standing institutionalized hostility towards Israel. Today's decision must be understood in the true context, an attempt to create a symmetry between Israel and the real sexual atrocities committed by Hamas. This is its sole motivation. The person behind this farce is Antonio Guterres. This is the same Guterres who sought to contextualize the October 7th massacre, who covered up the involvement of the UN employees in those atrocities, and who has dragged the UN to its lowest point. Guterres is now exploiting his final months as Secretary General to fabricate baseless accusations against Israel, completely devoid of any factual merit. Israel has comprehensively, thoroughly, and unequivocally refuted these allegations. Given that Antonio Guterres has chosen to violate these standards of honesty, integrity, professionalism, Israel has decided to sever all ties with the Secretary General's office and will wait until a new UN Secretary General is appointed. So, what do I think about this? First, the first paragraph. I thought the primary objective of the UN was to solve any conflict between the colonial powers. That's what I thought. That was its primary, but hey, it has changed apparently, and the UN is now a Hamas sympathizer. That's the first paragraph. The second paragraph, again, projection as usual, right? All of these sexual attacks. Well, why aren't we seeing any proof? These oven babies, where are they? The third paragraph, again, attacking a person. He did not solely make this decision, but again, that's how they want to make it seem. Why? We shall talk about it. So the fourth and fifth, it's all about how they are gonna basically have control over the UN Secretary General next time. So the next time you see these Israelis endorsing a Secretary General, then just know that they have paid 22 million if you catch my drift, to get that seat, right? So this also happened, right? Again, this is 4 hours after the thing occurred, right? They had proper evidence, right? They had proper evidence, unequivocal evidence, thorough evidence that it was the Russians that did this. right? It was the Russians that did this, right? And as usual, right, no proof has been provided to prove that this happened as the narrative goes, right? Well, too bad. Didn't he come to the Messiah grave or something? Is this a safe haven for y'all? Alright? This is not funny, but it is. Right? These dying empires, man. So, the Lebanon president tells Rubio that Israeli troops crucial to talk progress. Lebanese President Joseph told U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio that the ceasefire with Israel was crucial as Israel and Lebanon military delegation meeting at the Pentagon. Right? Again, it's all about outward appearance. Right? This is what these shallow people care about. This meeting should have not been held there. It should have not been held there. That's not a place to hold meetings for peace, especially. But again, this is that same alphabet diplomacy that we talked about in an earlier video. A statement from Aoun's office said that during a phone call, the president emphasized the need to exert all efforts to reach a ceasefire, considering it is essential gateway to moving on to any other step. Rubio reiterated the U.S. administration commitment to consolidate the outcomes of the previous ambassador-level negotiations between Washington between Israel and Lebanon, and expressed his support for Lebanese stability, independence, and sovereignty. The statement added, well, we have all seen the so-called Greater Israel map. What do they think about it? That's the question you should be asking. And if not, then your army, you as the president, your army, you have a sole responsibility to protect said stability, independence, and sovereignty of your nation. Stop outsourcing this stuff to the Pentagon. Right? This is that nonsense that I keep talking about. Before it's too late, Donald Tusk calls for unity between Poland and Ukraine. Right? Just perfect timing. Okay, please, go in. Right? These helpless Europeans immediately made a fuss over a mysterious drone crashing into a residential building in the Galatan, Romania. Of course, needs to be determined whose drone belongs to. Well, what if it turns out to be Ukraine? What are they gonna do? We know what would happen if it was Russian. What if it is Ukrainian? The power struggle between NATO and EU. Who do you think will win? This happened okay, again, at this juncture we need to take these as just market manipulation tactics. This is what right? Nobody can say where the UAV came from before running a forensic investigation. Read for yourself. Well, This right here, ladies and gentlemen, is a very deep and very esoteric, yet obvious, right? That's what I think of esoteric these days, obvious. So, where is this capture from? Well, this is a screen grab from the movie called V for Vendetta. V for Vendetta, right? And this here picture is literally the whole movie, right? You can watch the movie for yourself. It's quite an interesting movie, right? These people would even call it a prophecy of their own, right? It's quite an interesting movie, right? You need to pay attention to every word in that movie. Well, what do we see here in the picture? So let's begin with the far left, right? Far left. What do we have? We have a statue of a figure with wings and holding a bow, right? Now, some of you might be tempted to say that, hey, this is probably an angel, right? This is Christian representation right here that you are seeing. That would be tempting, right? That would be tempting. It would be, but it is not the truth. It is not the full picture, right? This image here that you're seeing is, yes, an angel, and this angel is called Apollo or Apollyon. And if you have paid attention to what I've been saying here about Apollo in the recent days, you would remember I told you that Apollo has an arrow and a bow, right? A bow and arrow. And as one of his powers is he shoots people and gives them diseases. And of course, he also has another arrow that he shoots so as to cure. This is literally what Europeans have worshipped. I remember I think 1 or 2 videos back, I linked a video from Midonation, right? And you remember that Mahmoud, if I'm not Mahmoud, I don't remember his name, right? But a channel called Midonation, and he was talking about how impressive the Europeans are, in a sense that they have held on to their beliefs for so long, right? Throughout the years, they have integrated into everything, but still were able to remain the same. They were impossible to change, so to speak. And I couldn't phrase it any accurate than that, right? That is extremely accurate, right? If you look, right? If you really look, right? Not see, look and understand what you're saying. Okay? So that is Apollo. How do diseases and cures, and who is Apollo? Well, V is Apollo. Okay, so that's just a clue. I'm not gonna ruin the movie for you, but because it doesn't say that. But V is Apollo. Okay, and his favorite weapon is the needle, a syringe. This is the new arrow for Apollo. In the movie and in the real world, right, the most effective way to deliver medication is the syringe directly to the blood. And it's also, right? So, what do we have below Apollo? What is that flag that we are seeing there? Well, that is a Christian flag, right? Because this movement took up a mask. They really worship Apollo, right? This death cult, as most people are now waking up and realizing that Europeans have a bloodlust problem. They have a bloodlust problem. You have to admit it. You have a bloodlust problem. Okay? Do not even try to distance yourself from the Israelis. No, those are your tribesmen. Those are your tribesmen. All of you. That's what we get. This entity called Zionism. It's literally rebranded colonialism, but with just less brutality, right? When there was no social media, there was no information warfare, they were brutal. You just need to look at what they were doing in Africa, and it's no good. Just believe me. Okay? But this whole movie, the leader comes into power through Christian nationalism. Okay? But again, they worship Apollo. You have to keep this in mind. So, what do we have also in the center of the image? Below, we have a quotation, right? A motto, right? Strength through unity. Unity through faith. What type of faith? Of course, like I said, Christianity. Strength through unity, well, we have heard this motto before. It is quite familiar, right? Peace through strength, right? Unity is peace, right? But again, semantics, they have to play with your brain a little bit to confuse you, right? So all of these things are familiar, right? You know them, right? And above them, above this motto of theirs, of this regime in this movie, this fictitious regime, there's a big screen, and this screen represents the media, right? It represents the media. This movie is literally that. They try to do it. They try to tell you every time, right, that Apollo will use the media, right? Superman, another Apollo movie, he's in the media, right? We have Spider-Man, he's in the media, right? And of course, it goes on and on and on and on, right? It's all a game, and they understand and they know this, right? So in this fictitious movie here called V for Vendetta, they literally had full control over the media and what it is saying, and basically the bad guy who in most of this most of this movie, he was just, you know, in a screen, because that is the truth, is the reality, right? This guy says that he'll give his decision on Truth Social and this and that. What do you think? That will cause flow of traffic to there. That is a private thing. That's not an official. But again, begs the question, is Twitter an official thing? It is not. But it has become central. Why? Because control. That is why it is their thing, right? Twitter and CIA is the same thing, no difference. Okay, so the media and information flow is key, right? Even in the other movie that we we talked about the last time, right? That was the Book of Eli, right? In that Book of Eli, of course, and in that part of the movie, if you pay attention, there is a book burning ritual, right? As we know, the book burning ritual, right? This enlightenment that came to Europe, which was basically barbarism unleashed onto the world, right? That's why we have this light post here, right? As a time of what they were calling the Dark Ages, right? I asked this question a while back, what was the world like during the Dark Ages, right? Because it is a European narrative, this phrasing, and it is a European narrative. Why? It's because Europeans like to pretend, or rather, I don't know, they believe that the world was still until they came into the picture, right? But what they call the Dark Ages, yeah, that was the time of the melanated rulers, the African rulers. That's what they call the Dark Ages, right? And what followed after that, which they call the Renaissance, that was basically them taking our history and making it theirs, right? These elites, right? And of course, they called upon their people to follow them into this hell. So, yeah, that is the movie for you, right? I would not like to get into this building, but hey, that's a whole another rabbit hole, brothers and sisters. Right? That is the meat. What I'm just giving you now is milk, even though most people think that it is meat, but no, it's milk still. Okay, so that's what you have, right? And this is perfect storytelling, if you ask me, right? This is some incredible storytelling right here, right? And it's a fantastic movie, right? It's a fantastic movie, right? But it is in the name of Apollo. It is in the worship of the devil, right? Who is the cure? If you have not figured out by the end of the movie, then you wouldn't know who Apollo is. So yeah, that's what you have right there, brothers and sisters, right? Just more. I wouldn't even call it. In a sense, it is enlightenment that you know your enemy and how they operate and how they deceive and manipulate and scheme, right? Like how all of a sudden the world is united against, for some reason, the hatred of black people. It's crazy. It's crazy. The hatred of Africans is crazy. Some crazy work. Why? Because psychological warfare, right? The white people, the Europeans, and the elites have projected their sin, their filth onto us, right? Whatever they say about black people, right? They're talking about themselves, right? So again, it is about that time, right? This is just right about pre-colonial, right? This is just about when the Arabs and the Muslim were arguing about invading Africa, invading Mali, right, and enslaving the Malians, even though they were prohibited from doing so. This is that time again. So we're gonna find out if that whole operation by your elites to use you as a battering ram for the world, we shall find out, right? We shall find out. But as we are seeing, okay, Netanyahu is Israel, literally. Trump is America. Macron is France. There isn't any accurate description than that. right? This is why, because of your leaders, God punishes the whole nation. This is why. So yeah, that's what we're having. And of course, this started a long time ago, right? It first started with them reducing the volume and increasing the price of these snacks, right? And then a funny thing started to happen in the chocolate industry, especially. They started replacing real chocolate with fake, and they are not really saying that it is fake. They just give the impression, or they imply it is fake. Well, this is just another opportunity for Africa, right? They either produce the chocolate here and we eat it for cheap, or we make it our own self. But trust me, there is a shortage. There is a shortage of this product in the system, and these people are taking, again, problem, reaction, solution. That's the Apollo way, right? That's the Apollo way. And you think that that cure will be an actual cure, but no, it will be your death, right? He just struck you twice, right? A shot and a booster. And you think you're gonna get cured? No. So they're gonna say, hey, we have this organic Oreos. Then boom, you eat it and die because it was worse than the prior. Right? Again, big industry, right? Big industry. Even here in Africa, big industry. We should invest in processing, right? Processing this situation here. All right, let them pretend that the real thing can be replaced. Let them play that game. But let them pretend 3D meat or human meat, lab grown, is better than real meat. Let them continue in that delusion. But they're gonna turn back. So we should be there. We shouldn't be following them into their ridiculousness, right? And be strict on the labeling, right, and presentation of these products, right? And what about basing on organic products? Enough of this synthetic stuff, right? How about we find ways to make organic stuff, right? Organic stuff, right? Organic juice, right? Not synthetic. It tastes well, but it's not healthy, right? It's like, I don't know, eating paper and expecting nutritional values from that. You might get a couple of chemicals, but it will not sustain you, right? So yeah. So anyway, I'm gonna put a pin on it right there, and of course we're gonna conversate next time. We're gonna conversate, right? Prince Easy signing out. Love you. Bye.